is on the call. I know, Greg.
Awesome. I'm on for like 15 minutes until I get on a plane. So excuse the noise in the background.
Yeah, no worries. I think what we'll do is we'll have updates from you guys, you and then Lawrence first, and then we'll hand it over to Meta, and then we'll do some additional updates.
Excellent. Well, with that, I will, if you don't mind, Greg, can I just jump right in?
Please go ahead, jump in.
Okay. Team and I have been down in San Francisco. We've had some great meetings. We're super excited to announce some of the partnerships that we got when we were down here. I think on the last call we talked about the 4 deals that we have. A couple of them have been announced, and we're going to be doing that subsequently here shortly. I think most of them we talked about at the governance forum. So those have moved along nicely, and subsequently from that, we've gotten more intros and more relationships into other places, so that's good. For the office space, we signed the LOI a couple of days ago, so that is moving along. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I sent you. I got you connected with that contractor.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. There's a couple other folks in the community as well, so we're putting them into the mix to see if that will work. And hopefully, if all things go well, we can be in that space mid-April, probably closer to the first part of May. So we're getting a lot of positive response from the community. I'm not surprised we're going to do something where we can bring a lot of blockchain developers too, and we're going to have seats in there for the co-op, and we're going to have instructions and lectures and everything else. So I couldn't be more thrilled about that. I can't wait for that thing to open and invite everybody in. So that's going to be happening shortly. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any. We're working on a couple of new hires, so those should be announced in the next couple of weeks. The team is headed out to New York for some other big partnership meetings out there next week. So we're moving as fast as we can. It's kind of scary that we've had the fund for less than a month, and we're 4 companies invested in, and I think we've got 6 others that are on the books. So we're cruising.
Very good, very, very good. That's awesome. Awesome update. Anything else?
No, I think that'll do it for me. Thanks, guys, for letting me pop in there first. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Lawrence, you want to go next?
Yep. Can they hear me? Okay. So we are moving along. We should close out our first 2 investments in the next 2 weeks, or the next week and a half. We've gotten things set up. We've gotten the company actually structured now, so we can take investments in the different funds. And it's been drinking from the fire hose on different things. Community's brought a couple of deals. Evan has made a couple of interesting introductions. One is a law firm with blockchain, and another one is doing atomic swaps. So I'm kind of really interested in that. And Greg, I'll catch you up on those when we get a chance to do our updates. I'm trying to think of, I've got a couple of speaking engagements coming up. Nash and I, and I'll publish those. Nash and I did another interview yesterday just to circulate RChain. And I'm just trying to think, there's so many things going on. I'm looking at our whiteboard. Oh, and I've got some really interesting stablecoin projects that we're working on, and hopefully to close the particulars on and bring to the community. And we will be getting out all of our information because we've been a little behind on doing that. And as I said, I'll an update for the community, and then Greg Heiss and I are going to do a Q&A session. And I've got a broader question for the community. It's serious. And I wanted to take the pulse. I think I've got an answer, but we had a question come in. So this is co-op marketing related. Someone asked us if we'd like to sponsor a NASCAR racing car.
I think that's already been done by like arc.io. They sponsored a racing car.
Dogecoin did that too.
Yeah. So it's common. It's a common theme for some reason, it seems.
So I guess my question would be, if you have some developer demographics on developers who watch NASCAR races.
That was my that was my question.
Yeah.
So I want to put it out there.
This is Steve. I'll throw it out. I have quite a bit of experience working in that space with sponsorship and working with some NASCAR teams, and I think the money spent is basically to buy access to the pits and hang out on a race, and I just don't think that for our use it would have any value other than some free tickets to some races occasionally.
Which reduces the Pacific Northwest because there's no NASCAR here.
All right, so that makes that an easy call then.
I'll keep mine short for today. So thanks. Give us some good feedback for the people who sent it to us.
Awesome. No, appreciate that. That's very good. Okay, so moving on over from the updates on applications to the and by the way, you know, when you get to a point where you can talk about the application details, I'm sure the community really wants to know about that, and it's okay to talk about things multiple times on the Hangouts, because not everyone sees every Hangout, or not everyone goes through the governance forum stuff. So.
Fair point. I will do that, and thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, sure. That's for both you and Greg.
Sure.
Awesome. So let's turn it over to Meta.
Good day, everyone.
Hello?
Am I coming through? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. So good day, everyone. I'm happy to present the development update. So we have 2 releases on the books. We have planned out. We have a release on March 15th that is node.void. And that release is going to consist of metrics and monitoring features for the node. We're very excited about getting the node API. This is the API that will interact, that the node operators will interact with, and being able to demonstrate some monitoring features for the node. We also have node.02. I'm going to go to a numbering scheme after node.void, because we're going to be releasing a lot of releases, so it makes a lot of sense. So March 29th, we have node.02 released, and we hope to be delivering SDK.01 functionality within the node as part of that release, and that's scheduled for March 29th. Ankur and Amir will give an update on marketing programs, but we've started collaborating with them around launch readiness for the March 29th and March 15th release, and Kelly is facilitating that. So very excited to be kind of bringing everything together with the marketing team so we can start getting to a place where we're all firing on all cannons, right? Demonstrating consistent success with our releases and our release cadence. So very excited about that. The compiler team continues to make great progress on the Rolang normalizer. That's the normalization of Rolang terms. It's a part of the compiler. They're also working on implementing a match algorithm, which is going to give us a flavor of the spatial types, right? Again, that's a segment of the compiler. The cryptography API work has been turned over to the Node team, and the Node team is now using that in the communications module for encrypting messages. And that work is progressing very quickly. So we are going to have encrypted messages here very soon within the Node, which is great to keep everything secure. And Michael Birch is going to be demonstrating the Rev System contract, at least pieces of it that he started to stub out later on after my update here. So we've made some good progress in the Rev System contract. And the team as a whole is spending a lot of time sorting out, like I've said before, we want to get nuts and bolts kind of bolted down so we know how things are actually going to work. So there's been a lot of focus and a lot of meetings and discussions around what does the RChain state on the blockchain look like? How is sharding going to actually work? How, in terms of the mechanics to the blockchain. So really a lot of great conversations in terms of nailing everything down so that the next step can be actually going into implementation. The Node team is making great progress on metrics for Prometheus. So we intend on implementing a Prometheus monitoring tool on top of the Node. So the thinking is that we're just going to expose any metrics that exist at a lower level on the Node. We're just going to expose those and let Prometheus do all of the higher mathematical operations and the trending and the charting, right? So we're not going to go spend time building that. We're just going to expose metrics from the Node and let a secondary tool take care of that for us. We're doing some good work on packaging and continuous integration. Our goal is to release RPM and Debian packages in addition to the Docker package as part of the March 15th release. And what I'd like to see is that these are created automatically via a CI tool. So we're standing up a CI tool. I think we're using GitLab. And through GitLab, every time we create a tag on master, it's my intention that this should give us packages. So we're not explicitly going through a packaging process with each release. It's a small amount of work, but it is still amount of work nonetheless that I would rather avoid. The storage monadic API is progressing well. And like I said before, they're doing implementing message encryption. So making great progress in the storage tier. As we all know, we need that for the tuple space. And that's where a lot of the on-node consensus, there's a big dependency between storing the events in the storage layer and consensus, history and rollback. So it's really critical we get storage just right. And the Rosette team, so I'm very happy to report this. I'm actually really excited to report this, that we actually have a community member, Abner Zhang, who is now participating fully, very fully on the VM port. Abner did some primitives early on, and he's now ported 2 opcodes. He's been working very closely with Tim. And Abner is one of those quintessential entrepreneur developers, I like to refer to them. He took a lot of initiative, he read all the documentation, and he was basically able to learn about the structure of the Scala port just by reading the documentation on the wiki and the pull requests. And he's ramped up beautifully, and Tim feels very confident in giving him some real core work on the VM port. So I'm very happy to report that. And now I'm going to make sure that he gets the right kind of bounty. So I'm super excited. He's very happy too. He's loving the work. It's really cool.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm very excited about that. Yeah. We did some work on tuple primitives. So we're getting some more primitives implemented. And we're doing some work on figuring out a game plan for the RBL compiler. So this piece of the project is still unscoped, and I feel like there's a lot of risk in the RBL compiler piece of the project. And so we're working out a plan to try to separate the compiler in the C++ implementation so we can learn about how it works, to try to see, one, if we can ascertain its behavior so we can either code to that specification. So if we understand what the C++ compiler outputs, we can do similarly in Scala, or 2, as a fallback option, potentially snap on the C++ compiler into the Roland compiler and have the Roland compiler use that as an integral component to output opcodes that the VM will then execute. We're trying to pull in the virtual machine timeline because it's really late. I'm concerned about this piece of the project, so I feel like there's a significant amount of risk in there that we need to kind of get all hands on deck on to resolve. That's my status update. If there's any questions, I'll take them now.
Hey, Meta. So that was a pretty great story about how a kind of freelancing roaming developer kind of joined in and made some good contributions. Could you explain a little bit more about the best way, if anybody's hearing this, that they can do that same thing in a most productive way?
Yeah, so when Abner reached out to me, what I told Abner to do is I sent him a bunch of the documentation. So I told him that, yes, the bounty tickets that we have right now are these primitives. He reached out, said he was interested in doing the work. I turned him towards the documentation on the wiki. I turned him towards the pull requests for some of the example primitives that Tim had created, because we had some sample code there. So he took a look at those, he took a look at the documentation, and then he cut his first PR. And then Tim reviewed the PR. Tim had to give a fair bit of feedback on the first PR, but after he gave that gave that feedback on the PR, then Abner was able to pick up where he left off and continue running with it. That was pretty much it. One of the reasons why I like for the developers that, coming in from the community, be able to be self-taught is because we need to make sure that the core team that they're able to kind of ramp up on their own and come up and running right to the same speed as the core team independently. Because what we can't do is we can't spend a lot of time on the core team ramping up community developers. As much as we'd like to, the core team is really marching towards getting functionality in for Mercury, right? And I do get approached by not a lot, but a fair number of developers that are wanting to participate in the bounty program. And I tell them if they can learn enough about the project on their own and cut a small PR that's accepted, then we can iterate from there. But it's very, very hard to do a high touch onboarding training for community developers simply because there's only a limited number of hours in the day, right, for the core team. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the last one I had is slightly off topic, but I noticed that we're on an Apache open source license. Has there been any talk about maybe doing something like a GPL?
I'll let Greg answer that question because Greg and I had some discussions about GPL.
Okay.
Yes. So more specifically, can you rephrase the question?
Right. So a GPL license is also sometimes known as copy left, where they were. It's required.
We know what the GPL license is. I think most people in the community knows that.
Yeah. So the difference between the Apache and the GPL is Apache you can use it privately. Just wondering if there has been some discussion about which way to go on that.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, from the inception of the project, we insisted
on
Apache 2.0. There was discussion around using MIT or something like that, but no, it all is the preference for some time now has been Apache 2.0. Where
thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes we have issues because we take on dependencies that are, LGPL'd. We never take on anything that's completely copylefted. Yeah. Okay. Meta, I promised you that I would go and look at the compiler and see how extractable it is. And I'm going to tell you now.
It's okay. I've got other people on it. No worries.
But it's not it's not as extractable as I was hoping it was. It actually includes, but both the compile.h and the compile.cc include enough stuff. So in particular, compile.cc includes vm.h. So it's not very extractable at all. So just alerting you that it would be a painful extraction, not an easy snip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll have to think about that as a part of our planning.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Could you repeat that? What's not a simple snip?
Extracting compile, like trying to make compile.cc stand on its own. I mean, if you're willing to boot up the Rosette VM, you could probably, you could call the compiler as a part of a, like a external process call or a JNI call or something like that. So if you had the compiler running on its own Java thread, which would mean booting up the entire Rosette VM, then you could call in through JNI into the VM and get the thing to compile on your behalf and spit back out something that could be utilized. So
do you anticipate Rolang code to be making use of the compiler, like defining things at runtime?
So they're definitely, the way Rosette works is the REPL is a read, compile, execute loop, right? So that's why the compiler is more wildly embedded. than just a a straight line off the its own little pipeline, not connected. What we were hoping was potentially using the just taking the compile.cc code, and instead of writing some Scala compiler code, just using the C++ code. But a quick review shows that it's going to drag in almost all of the VM.
So why can't we simply replace the parts where it's optimizing the lookup of the thing with a symbol to be resolved later, and then have an explicit linking step?
I think it's a little bit more complicated than just that. Yeah, it requires a lot more extraction, right? There's extensive use of the VM all throughout the compile code.
I just want to clarify that it should be, or as far as I can see, it seems like it's just the VM literals that are being pulled in. But if we just split that, then the rest is like easily splittable.
Oh, okay. Oh, so maybe I was too hasty. It could be the case. Let me just take a look. So you're saying that.
So you were looking through.
I don't mean to get in the weeds during this call, but I know the community really likes the technical discussion. Okay. So
this is important.
Yeah, this is kind of important. So let me just take a look here. I was just looking at it. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can do a search here.
So let me just go through my thought process on this. So your worry is that compile.cc includes vm.h. And so...
No, it's not just that it includes it. I was looking at the actual calls to VM.
Yeah. So so from at least my read, it's just the VM literals. But is there something else?
Well, that's what I was just checking. Hang on a second. Okay, so it looks like at emit literal, so which is 398, we have the check on the VM literals, and that looks like. Is there any other call to the VM? It looks okay, actually. I'm not seeing anything else. So it would be great if I were wrong here. If it's just that call, then I think it's better. We're in a better situation than I had hoped.
Yeah, I've gone through this file a number of times. I think it should just be that, and the rest is really just emitting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks okay. Did you check and see if hiding behind some of these other calls, there's not a define that calls out to the VM?
So I mean, I've looked at most of the emits. Those are let me 1 second. Let me just double check before I say this publicly. So those mostly, if I'm not mistaken, 1 second. Yeah, those mostly just go out to call.cc, and it generates instructions, and that's it. Yeah. So.
Okay. All right.
I'm pretty sure that it's just those. Okay.
Then the only other place where there might be some weirdness is in the prims, right? So you have to have some lineup for the prims.
Yeah.
The compiler is going to have some built-in knowledge about the prims, and so then that has to line up with however we do the prims for the Java VM. No, okay, that looks good. Oh, I'm so happy to be wrong here. It would be really good if we can use the C++, because then the compiler would be much faster as well.
Yeah, so it's just basically serializing. That's the only issue.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Very good. That's fantastic. That's awesome. Well, that's some of the best news I've had today.
Well, thank you for taking a look at that right now, Greg. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I felt bad that I had it on my plate and I hadn't had a chance to look at it yet. So great. So I don't mean to take up too much time on the community call, but these kinds of things are important. Good. So any other questions or comments about the technical stuff? Going once? Going twice?
I have one question.
Yes.
One of our things that we plan to do is to remove the metadata from pointers in order to later on be able to go 64-bit.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that just off the top of your head? I'm not asking for a dive into the code right now, just thoughts at this point.
Well, I mean, you know, you're still going to have to box these things, right? When you go 64-bit, you're not going to be able to use all 64 bits because you have to be able to dispatch.
Well, our thought was to take the metadata that's stored within object pointers and separate it out from the pointer itself, such that it can be accessed via some sort of method on a object pointer class or something like that.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was kind of the sort of standard industry hack, right? Even .NET did what the Rosette virtual machine did. So, but maybe you can get away with it now because C++ is a little different than when we were writing it.
Yeah, we understand that.
Yeah, so you might be able to get away with it. Yeah, so yes, send me a proposal, and I'll take a look for sure.
There's a document we've stuck in the wiki that talks to this. There isn't a lot of detail there yet, but I can. You want an email? Is that what you'd like? A link to that document?
Yeah, a link to the document is perfect. Yeah, exactly. And if you want to paste it here, other people might be interested in the community.
Okay, I'll get that in just a second.
Awesome, I appreciate it. Okay, so any other questions or comments about the technical progress?
We're still discussing how the sharding works, and that itself has an impact on the design of Rev. But I don't think this is the place for that discussion.
Yeah, right. But I think Kent was going to go over changes to the state. Or no. There was a Rev contract, right?
Well, we have a PR open that has a drafted Rev system contract, which only does one possible version of Rev. Because like Mike just said, we want the design to match the sharding solution.
Of course.
Everything scales.
But
I guess one thing I would just say is that Rev will probably not look much like the code of ERC20, because ERC20 requires locking the entire balance map to do an update.
Yeah.
We have various ways around that. One of them is based on the notion of a purse that was developed in the object capabilities community and uses the idea of unforgeable names that when you compare those two, it's internally, even if they're from different namespaces, even if the purses are from different namespaces, they all share this internal unforgeable name. So you can shard out the Rev contract over all your shards and just give them each shard contract a copy of that name. And there are some other ideas we've got too, and that pull request that Michael was talking about is one of those ideas.
Right. So actually, as a straw man, if we could, Michael, if you want to walk us through that, we talked about this before. If you want to walk the community through that, with the proviso that this is not the final design, but rather this talks about some of the design trade-offs.
Sure, we can do that. I'll do a screen share here, I guess, of GitHub, just so that everyone can see what I'm looking at. You'll notice throughout this PR, there's comments that I've put in various spots saying this is all temporary and not at all how it might work in the end, but here's some reasons why it could work this way and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the basic premise behind everything is the idea of an abstract condition.
Hey, Michael, sorry to interrupt, but can you just increase the font a little bit?
Sure, I can do that. At least I think I can do that. There we go.
There we go. Thanks.
Cool. So yeah, having some kind of condition that says you can take money out of this wallet or purse or however we decide to implement that. And so you provide it evidence that says, yes, I am meeting this condition. I do have permission to do the thing that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And so the typical ERC20 version of this is the evidence is just your signature against the nonce, right? The Ethereum transaction counter that ensures that replay attacks can't happen. Mm-hmm. But in RChain, we can do this neat little thing where we have, this is named secret name, but that's not really a great nomenclature. Like Mike said, it should be unforgeable name. And the idea is that when you create a new unforgeable name, basically you can just provide as the evidence that name, and that becomes the key itself. It's acting very similarly to a public key, private key pair, except it's entirely on the blockchain, and it's the unforgeability, not the privacy, that makes it secure. And so you can use this kind of a condition to secure your wallets instead. But of course, we will still support signatures because that's sort of standard, something that people expect and something that users will likely be interested in being able to do.
Well, can you walk us through like an end-to-end use case?
Yeah, I can try to do that. Let's scroll to here. So this revsystem.ro is very, very much a strongman. Like it's probably going to look nothing like this in the end when we've finally worked all this out. But the idea is that you create a new supply of tokens, and when you do this, you need to give it an initial account with an initial condition. And so the way I set it up is that there is one of these unforgeable names that's locking the supply. And so presumably, this is really more of a governance question, but presumably you would have that unforgeable name be under the control of the co-op so that they can manage the supply. Mm-hmm. I also point out, possibly somewhere else, I think I pointed out in this comment up here, that we're, as of now, assuming a total fixed supply. And again, that could totally change. And it's in some ways a governance question as well, whether or not you want to be able to mint tokens, or have everything be created at once and then just slowly doled out over time? But
no, currently we're proposing that we mint as a part of validator fees, but that the mint is that it's capped, right? So there's an asymptotic.
Sure. So I guess what I'm saying is that mint can be embedded in create everything at once, but most of it is locked up in this account that no one can access, and money comes out of that account at sort of regular intervals is equivalent to minting.
Yeah, exactly.
So once you've created the supply, then what you want to do is initialize all of your accounts. So you might want to create what Kent coined this term, the idea of a basic account, which is just the standard signature stuff. So the supply says, give me your public key and I'll give you some amount of rev. So this is a, just a sample that I've put here, but the idea is that the supply is handing 500 rev to this public key. And so in here, you could instead put in what I was calling a name locked rev account, which instead of providing it a public key, you give it the name that you want to have it send back your special private name on, which locks your tokens. And that's sort of just the core functionality of this. There's nothing fancy about it, but like Mike said, we're looking at other options that have advantages and potentially can compose with this in certain ways.
Yeah, so this is fantastic though, because it helps the community start to see how there's some high level features, right? One, the staking token contract is written entirely in Rolang, so that should jump out to people right away. It's not below the line, in Scala or something else. So that's really important. It also, so with respect to this contract, what feature sets are you using currently that are kind of in the spec that's just come out? And are there any features that you're currently using that are outside of that spec? Or are you all inside? And then how much of those feature sets are implemented?
So nothing in here, actually, sorry, that's not true. Nothing in here I would consider to be outside the spec. It's all straight Rolang with unforgeable names, which is something that we definitely intend to support forever. The one thing that is in the spec, which is not in here, is something, and I guess I've got this up, so maybe I'll maybe just highlight this quickly. So Solidity, right, in Ethereum has this idea of message.sender, and that's used to sort of verify identity. And there's a way in which you can embed that in Rolang. And so you basically make some syntactic sugar that allows you to mimic this sender functionality. And that's something which, because it is sugar,
Michael, you cut out. Can anyone else hear Michael?
It needs to happen at the VM/. Sorry.
It's okay.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you can go now.
Yeah.
Okay. So the sender embedding in Rolang functionality may or may not ever end up in the final product because there are certain drawbacks to it. The main pro for it is that it looks very similar to Ethereum, and we should be able to ease Ethereum developers over nicely if we allow something along those lines. But the drawback is that it's not as nice as the object capability style security because it's validating permission instead of authority, if that makes sense to people.
Yeah. That's great. No, I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Sort of in connection with this, since you just mentioned it, one of the things that we have also been going through with a lot more attention than has been given up to this point is exactly where the payments are made, who's responsible for the payments. And Kent has been arguing, to my mind, more successfully, that the payments actually always are attached to the sender. Maybe next week, depending on how things go, we might be able to go through some of the arguments around those, so people get a sense of what that's, what some of the considerations are. And basically, for those who are interested, it comes down to the fact that contracts have a longer life than an Ethereum and a method on a Solidity object. So for Solidity, methods run to completion, whereas a contract may be stuck on a for comprehension for potentially a very long time. That may be one of its major ways of interacting with the world. And so now you have this question of, does the agent that invoked the contract that started the lifetime of the for comprehension pay, or does the sender who interacts with the for comprehension pay? And it does turn out to be considerably simpler if we always make the sender pay. So that has some advantages. There are other advantages in terms of a chain of custody with respect to the for comprehensions and the original invoker. But we'll talk about that in a lot more detail, hopefully in the next few community hangouts. Thanks again, Michael. I thought that was really good. I wonder if anyone else has any other questions or comments about that.
A quick question on names. How are they registered?
That's a great question. So it depends on what kind of name you're talking about, because remember that in Rolang, names can be just quoted processes. And so when you're talking about certain names, like say you have the string hello world, which in Rolang is actually a process, you can quote that process. And now you've got a new name, hello world, which literally anyone can write down. This is not unforgeable, right? This is what we've been calling a public name. And so there needs to be a separate registry for, because you, for example, don't want just a random person to pick up the name, RChain co-op admin or something, something that has semantic meaning to humans that is potentially confusing. And there has been some discussion about how to set up that kind of registry, but it's sort of outside the scope of the design of the contracts themselves. The unforgeable names, though, on the other hand, you don't really need to worry about registry for, because they're unforgeable. Like when you write down new X in some process, that X is different than everyone else's X, and no one else can touch it unless you give it to them. And so that's something that you get to manage personally. It's just the public names that need to be registered.
All right, so the private names can be anything I want, and it might be that someone else has the same semantic name, but they're different because they're private.
Right, because they're unforgeable. Yeah.
Got it.
Awesome.
And we're currently considering in row calculus, any process can be quoted and sent on. In Rolang, it doesn't really make sense to send on the string hello world. So we're considering outlawing sending on processes that are not of the form, row colon. As or something. So
carving out a built-in namespace where, yeah.
Got it.
And so there would be some. There's a question of whether the RChain co-op wants to play the role of name registry service like the IANA, or and manage the resulting land grab, or if we just want to delegate to the IANA and say, if you want to use row:google.com, then you have to own google.com and prove that somehow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So
I think I have a suggestion on this one. It should be a decentralized registry, right? Some way, rather than co-op is managing this kind of registry. I think this may not be a good idea in the beginning. We can start, but eventually this should be completely decentralized version of registry.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable sentiment, for sure. I need to move the conversation along. This was fantastic, really, really good stuff. But we have a really interesting discussion that needs some airtime. Patrick and Ankur and several other people have been working to put together a proposal, a marketing proposal for the RChain community to do developer outreach. And I wanted to give them some time to talk about the proposal. The proposal will be posted to Discord if it hasn't already, for the community to review. I spoke with the team yesterday about some of the salient points of the proposal, and I'll be reviewing the materials whenever we're flying out to Europe. And then the idea is to kind of bring the community process, the decision making about the proposal and funding it to some kind of conclusion on the 14th of March. I've gotten word, at least from Reflective Ventures, that they are interested in helping out with funding some portion of the proposal. I haven't had a chance to talk with Pythia to see if they're interested in helping out with funding some portion of the proposal, since the proposal is global and benefits all of the RChain community members. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Patrick and Ankur. Patrick, are you there?
Hello.
There we go.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. That was the summary.
But only just barely. Can you get any closer to the microphone?
Yeah, you got to fix your mic.
Hello?
Hey, this is Ankur. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're
much
better, yeah.
Sorry, I had to drop for a second, so I'd asked Patrick and Mrinal to cover. I'm on my way to the airport. But yeah, real quick. So I saw some questions were being asked on Discord already. So I just wanted to give everyone context. So essentially, a few of us who were very interested in RChain and are co-op members who have experience working with developers and launching platforms like Azure and Amazon Web Services and Alexa at these companies wanted to get together and share our experiences, put together best practices and ideas on how we may be able to launch RChain and then drive developer adoption over the next couple of years. I think it's a group of 14 people, all backgrounds in developer outreach and marketing. We have a working plan or proposal in place, and we've been working closely with Patrick and Lawrence on the plan, and then been soliciting feedback one by one. So we talked to Medha, Kelly, then our folks over at Reflective, and have reached out to Pythia as well. And then yesterday we met with Greg M, and just talked about the plan at a high level. So the idea is it's in a place where some of the ideas are fleshed out, the research where we talk to developers and startups to get their feedback have been done. And it's at a point where I'd love to release it to the broader co-op members as a whole. And just the ask is for everybody to dive in and share ideas around what they think is going to work, some things that may have been missed. Maybe somebody knows of potential partners that they can make introductions to. But the idea is just to solicit feedback at large from the community. And then once we, everybody's given their inputs in, we'll once again get together and update the plan based on those inputs. And it's essentially a plan. The way I would put it is, and the way it's set up once everyone starts reading through it, is it's set up in a way where it'll help all of us co-op members align on the direction. But then it's a plan for the community to be executed by the community. So that's how we are envisioning it. Just wanted to set that expectation, and then we'll just round up the last round of feedbacks from Reflective and from Greg M. and release it on the Discord channel potentially tomorrow. But I just wanted to pause there. Mrinal, I know you're on the call if you wanted to add anything else to it, or if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I think just one important piece of context here. The reason why, we wanted to do some research first, reach out to Pythia, Reflexive, some of the co-op members, and Pyrofex, and do that first, was we thought since it's a process and a function, marketing that is, that touches across the entire organization, we really didn't want it to turn into sort of a tyranny of the blank page sort of situation. So the idea was to get everyone's feedback, consolidated, best practices from the industry, and put a document together that people could react to in the community. And the reason to do that process that way was just to make it more efficient. And we realized that, this has to be a co-op and community-driven effort. But documenting it in a rigorous manner, we thought would help make it more specific and would give people something to react to. And hence the process we followed. But yes, the idea is to release it widely to the community and gather full feedback and make sure everyone's aligned.
So first of all, I want to applaud your initiative, and based upon the work that I've seen you do, I think this is great. And I'm hoping that more groups within the co-op self-organize in exactly this way. Nothing's been decided, but some group has taken it on to do the legwork, do the homework, frame the discussion, and puts an actionable proposal forward. So I think this is very, very much in alignment with what we're hoping the co-op can do. And I'm excited to dive into the details, as I'm sure that other people in the community are as well. And that way, and you provided a lot of details, which is good. That's the sign of a good proposal. So I'm really, really happy that you've done this work, and I think this is exactly how the co-op ought to function, right? You acted with your own agency and produced a pretty high quality offering here. So thank you very much for that effort.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to thank everyone from like Reflective, Pythia, Patrick, and everybody else who contributed to it as well. A lot of good feedback, and we've tried to incorporate all of that into it. I just want to add one more thing because I saw a question from, I think it was Ian. So there is a budget associated with it, but to clarify, it's not a budget for us. We are not a consulting group. As I said, we are co-op members who self-organize. It's a budget that we think that the co-op and its entities should invest to grow RChain, and we have made recommendations on where they could be allocated. And the other principle behind that is we think it should help execute on the plan, and we think that's the best possible way to incentivize folks to help grow RChain. So just wanted to clarify that because sometimes budget can be confusing.
Yeah, and then on the other side of this, basically as a result of looking over the proposal and speaking with the folks who put it together, the co-op has reached the conclusion that we'll probably have to have a marketing person whose remit includes at least overseeing this effort if it does get funded by the co-op and the corresponding other parties that are touched on. So hopefully people will take it. One thing I want to suggest to Encore is just get the draft out. Don't wait for any more feedback. I don't this community really likes to be in early. It doesn't need a polished document.
Yeah, sure. As in, we're just taking the feedback from yesterday. So it turned out that a bunch of us are flying right now. So we'll get it out. We'll get it out later today.
Fantastic. I appreciate it. Awesome. So we only have a few minutes left in the call. I'll just give a quick update, and then I wanted to see. I don't want to put you on the spot, Kelly, but if you want to also give us some updates on the developer.rchain.coop. Love to hear from you on that. Just to remind people, some of us are flying to Europe with a twofold purpose. Actually, threefold purpose. We're off.
Alaska or Virgin? Alaska, American Virgin. The same terminal. All right. Please get back.
Maybe we could.
Unger, could you mute, please?
Or Christian, maybe you can mute him. Okay, great. So we're flying. So there's a team of us that includes Mike, Kenny, Lilia, and myself. And we're flying out. Mike's coming a little bit later than we are because we're headed off to the three of us are headed off to Switzerland to cement the deal with Lika. So that will be on the boots on the ground in time to be able to take a Monday meeting with Richard Olson, who is one of the founders of Lika and head of the Zurich team. So, and then from there, we will head over to Paris and meet with Paul Andres Melius, who is a researcher at Sorbonne that Mike has worked with and I've engaged with occasionally, and who is quite enthusiastic and excited about the blockchain space and some of the things that the co-op is doing. Both organizationally as well as technically, and then we'll jump over from there to the UK and meet with a team from Oxford and a team from Cambridge and a single researcher from Edinburgh, and then a team from Imperial. So all of that has been organized, and then finally. After that, again, the three of us will jump over to Berlin and meet with Peter Harris to talk about organizing a joint space for RChain and Resonate in Berlin, and B, starting the paperwork to start up an RChain .coop.de. So German offices, German jurisdiction, basically an independent but correlated entity under the German cooperative laws, which will be the hub for the RChain European offices. If people have any questions about that, let's hold those and give Kelly some time if Kelly's up for it to give us an update on the developer.rchain.coop.
Sure, thanks, Greg. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. Good news, excellent opportunities to listen to community feedback, both at the governance forum, on the Discord channels, on Telegram. We have listened to that feedback, we've heard it, and are starting to incorporate that type of information into the developer website. And so as such, one of the things that's going to happen in the short term will be the publication of the Roland Mercury specification document. The big ask from the community has been for more information about the Roland syntax, and although the current release, the SDK 1, doesn't reflect that in its entirety per se, there's a need and a desire to see it in documentation form. So we should have that published in the next week, and we're excited to share that with the community. Also, just looking at the website and designing it to continue to be able to grow and respond to our changing audience types. There are many different types of audiences that are coming to this site, as well as designing to be ready to scale for new and growing amounts of content as this project continues to grow towards Mercury. So those types of changes will be happening sometimes small little increments and other times big leaps and bounds, but will be happening based on community feedback and needs of the community related to the site. Happy to field any questions offline or in Discord if anyone has it.
No, I really appreciate that. I very much enjoyed our call the other day. I'm quite excited about the possible integration between the Bounty program and the developer site. And also, you know, the ability for developers to find and connect with each other. I really think, especially once we start opening offices around the world, then one of the things that we're going to do is to help foster community meetups around the world. And so it'd be really helpful if we can get this hub of community meetups that feed into the developer.rchain. So I really appreciate this work. This is good stuff. Any other questions or comments about the RChain, the developer.rchain.coop from the community?
What's Kelly's Discord handle?
At Kelly Foster, putting it in the chat window.
Thank you.
Okay. Just a handful of other things. I know we're at the top of the hour, but if people will indulge me for just a few more minutes. We had some exciting stuff happening at the end of last week, beginning of this week. We have established a relationship with Cumberland Mining to help us get the co-op's assets into an alignment with the board requirements about the distribution of assets. So we transferred roughly $1 million worth of Ether into fiat. And we use that, by the way, to bring the deal with Pyrofex to a close. So I'm very, very excited about that. I think we still have a little bit of BTC to send over, but they've already issued the shares. So woohoo! The CryptoFex, it's on its way. Very, very excited about that. And then, but also excited because, you know, we've been a little bit hampered because we had only a few avenues to be able to shift crypto into fiat, and now we have several more. And we're testing them out. Kenny did a great job. We also had some help from one of Vlad's friends. Oh, his name was John West. Is that right, Kenny?
Yeah, absolutely. John is like kind of an amazing character. He can do so many things, and in such a short time, he's kind of come up to speed so quickly. I've been very impressed, and yeah, he's a very special person. That's for sure.
Next, you'll be telling me he's a NASCAR race driver as well.
It's possible. It's possible.
Okay, and then so other organizational updates. Tomorrow, I will be working with Rudy Harper and I think Mernal is going to be there. I'm not sure, to present to the board of La Marzoca, who is interested in getting into crypto. And as a part of this, as I mentioned before, we get a La Marzoca espresso machine for the RChain offices. So that's very good. But kind of more importantly, there's a huge whole distribution network and supply chain that hopefully will be utilizing RChain in the not too distant future. So I'm very, very excited about that opportunity, and I really appreciate Rudy for setting that up. I think that's it for all the updates. If people have any more questions, I really look forward to hearing from them, but I have to jump off now. Please do, if you do, you know, especially technical questions, take a look at the Rev contract, you know, ask questions about that. We'll be talking a little bit more about sharding. I have to say that more people are warming up to the idea of sharding the staking token. and in fact, I'll even say that Nash and Mike independently discovered a very similar solution to the idea of sharding the staking token. So So a lot of people are warming up to this idea. So I want the community to be apprised. But with that, I'm going to sign off, and thanks to everyone for joining us today.
Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.
That's great. That's what I want to hear.